For most of my life, I believed that if I just kept striving, if I worked harder, looked better, made fewer mistakes, then happiness would follow. Perfect job, perfect home, perfect relationships. I thought that was the formula. But now, at 65, I've come to a sobering truth. I wasn't chasing perfection. I was chasing happiness. And in trying so hard to get everything just right, I lost what I was really searching for: my joy. This video is my story, and maybe it's a little bit yours too. Before we dive in, if you've ever found yourself caught in the chase for perfection or felt like joy was slipping through your fingers, I invite you to stick around. This might be the perspective you didn't know you needed. I spent years trying to shape my life into something flawless. I thought if I could just control every detail, manage every expectation, and avoid every mistake, then everything would feel right. I poured myself into my work, made sure the house was spotless, kept up appearances, did everything the so-called right way. But deep down, I was exhausted. There's a kind of pressure that comes with trying to hold it all together, this invisible weight that creeps in slowly. You don't notice it at first, you think it's just ambition or discipline, but over time it starts to wear on you. The late nights spent perfecting reports that no one would remember, the small, tense silences in conversations because I couldn't admit I was wrong, the joyless celebrations where the cake was beautiful, but I couldn't taste it because I was too busy making sure everything was perfect. I told myself it was all worth it, that one day when everything was finally in place, I'd relax, I'd enjoy it. I just had to keep pushing a little longer. But that moment never came. It was like chasing a mirage. Every time I thought I was close, it shifted just out of reach. The perfect version of life I was aiming for kept evolving, getting more polished, more demanding. And no matter how much I achieved, it never felt like enough. I wasn't resting. I wasn't breathing. I wasn't living. What made it worse was how good everything looked on the outside. People would compliment my success, admire the way I carried myself, even tell me they wished they had my life. But inside, I was running on empty. I smiled, I nodded, but I felt disconnected from others, from myself, from the very life I had worked so hard to build. And the relationships, they suffered too. When you're consumed with maintaining an image, there's not much room left for vulnerability. I became guarded, even with the people closest to me. I was so focused on doing things right that I forgot how to be real. And without real connection, even the best relationships start to feel shallow. I think the saddest part is how long it took me to see it, because perfection doesn't fall apart all at once. It chips away at your joy in quiet, almost invisible ways. You wake up one day and realize you haven't laughed deeply in a while. You notice that the hobbies you once loved are gathering dust, that you're always thinking about what's next, never what's now. And then it hits you. You've been so busy trying to create the perfect life, you forgot to live the one you have. It all came to a head during what should have been a beautiful moment. We had gathered as a family. Everyone was there. The house looked immaculate. The food was perfect. The laughter was flowing around me. I had done everything to make it special, to make it look right. And on the surface, it was. It looked like the kind of day you'd frame in a photo. But I felt nothing. I stood there holding a glass of wine, smiling at the right times, nodding in conversation, and inside I felt completely hollow, like I was watching my life from the outside, disconnected from it. That joy I had been chasing, it wasn't there, not even close. And the worst part was, no one noticed, because I had gotten so good at performing, at presenting the version of myself I thought the world wanted to see, that even my emptiness had become invisible. I went to the bathroom just to get a moment alone. I looked at myself in the mirror, perfectly dressed, everything in place, and I remember thinking, who even is this? Not in a dramatic way, just numb, detached, like I had become a character in someone else's script. That was my breaking point. I realized in that quiet, personal moment that I had spent years building a version of life that looked beautiful on the outside but felt painfully empty on the inside. I had been so focused on crafting an image, on checking every box, meeting every standard, avoiding every flaw, that I lost the ability to simply be me. And it wasn't just about that one day. It was the accumulation of hundreds of days, hundreds of quiet compromises, where I chose control over connection, perfection over presence. I had been so afraid of being vulnerable, of making mistakes, of being seen in my humanness, that I had walled myself off from the very things that make life worth living. In that moment, something cracked open in me. Not a breakdown, but an awakening. I knew I couldn't keep going like this. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. I couldn't keep polishing a life that didn't reflect who I really was. And the hardest part, admitting that I had done this to myself, that no one else was holding me to these standards but me. I left that gathering feeling quiet, not sad, not angry, just honest. For the first time in a long time, I stopped trying to fix anything. I just sat with the truth. The life I built was beautiful, but it wasn't mine anymore. And if I wanted to feel joy again, I'd have to let go of the illusion I'd been clinging to. After that day, something in me shifted. I didn't have a grand plan. I didn't wake up the next morning with all the answers. But I did know one thing. I was done chasing perfect. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to slow down. Really slow down. No more scrambling to meet expectations that were never mine to begin with. No more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I stopped asking, what needs to be fixed, and started asking, what feels real? Letting go of perfection wasn't easy. It had been my safety net for so long. It made me feel in control, capable, strong, even when I wasn't any of those things. It was the armor I wore to protect myself from judgment, from disappointment, from my own fears. But I started small. I stopped over-planning every detail of my days. I let the house be a little messy. I gave myself permission to rest without guilt. I didn't always return calls right away. I didn't force a smile when I didn't feel like smiling. And slowly I started to feel human again. There was a day I remember clearly. It wasn't anything dramatic. Just me, sitting outside with a cup of coffee, listening to the birds, doing absolutely nothing. And for some reason, I felt peace. Not excitement, not pride, just quiet, steady peace. That was new. That was different. And I realized I had missed that kind of peace for decades because I was too busy trying to be more than I already was. I started rediscovering things I'd pushed aside in my pursuit of perfection. Old music I used to love. Books that didn't teach me anything but simply made me feel. Walks without a destination. Conversations that weren't about fixing problems, just sharing space. And I stopped criticizing myself so much. When I messed up, I didn't spiral. I reminded myself, you're allowed to be human. You're allowed to not get it all right. It was like taking off a heavy coat I didn't realize I'd been wearing. That shift, the choice to stop striving and start feeling, it changed everything. I didn't need to achieve anything to feel worthy anymore. I didn't need a perfectly curated life to feel proud. I just needed to be honest with myself and to live in a way that felt true. The more I let go, the lighter I became. Not because life was suddenly easy, but because I wasn't carrying the impossible weight of perfection on my back anymore. And in its place, something better started to grow. Joy. Gentle, imperfect, deeply real joy. What surprised me the most was how quickly joy returned when I stopped chasing it. It didn't come in grand, life-changing moments. It came in the small things, the quiet mornings, laughing at my own mistakes, reconnecting with old hobbies I thought I'd outgrown. I started painting again, not to be good at it, just because it made me feel alive. I let people see the real me, messy, honest, imperfect. And in return, they showed up in ways I never expected. My relationships grew deeper, more honest, more human. I realized that happiness was never hiding in perfection. It was always waiting in the moments I kept skipping over, the ones I thought didn't matter. And now, life still has its hard days, but I show up for them fully. I'm not performing anymore. I'm living, and that has made all the difference. If you've spent your life chasing perfection only to feel like joy slipped through your fingers, you're not alone. I lived that story for decades, but here's what I've learned. It's never too late to choose something different. Life feels lighter now, not because everything's perfect, but because I stopped needing it to be. I've traded pressure for peace, and I wouldn't go back for anything. What about you? Have you struggled with perfectionism? What helped you find your way back to joy? I'd love to hear your story in the comments.